Hi everyone, my name is Kevin and I work at the VIP Kid head office, and today I'd like to talk to you about the Lesson 8 and Lesson 9 writing lessons. So when you start each of these lessons, you'll notice on the first slide the goals that the students will accomplish in that given lesson. In order to achieve the goals set for each lesson, you will be using a 3-step module task for writing. So the 3 steps are separated between get ready, get set, and go. In the first writing lesson, you'll be handling the get ready and part of the get set. Under get ready, you and your student will begin to use the PAT method, purpose, audience, and tone, and we'll get to that in a little bit. And then the student will begin to learn about text types. In get set, and this is still in the first writing lesson, your student will begin to brainstorm ideas and learn useful vocabulary and language patterns. Now moving on to the second lesson, lesson 9, for the writing lesson, your student will begin to use writing sub skills. They'll start actually creating, and they'll have drafts, and they'll edit the writing, and then they will begin to self-assess, and we'll get into that further in a little bit. Now let's look at lesson 8 structure. First, we'll start with the warm-up, followed by set the writing task. Then we'll decide the PAT. You and your student will brainstorm ideas. You'll go through different language patterns. The student will plan the writing, and then you will get to assign homework. So, what does set the writing task really mean? This is in the beginning of the class where you and your student will have a task that needs to be written. In this example here, we have a personal description. The task that is given to your student is to write a personal description. Now that your student has been assigned a task, and in this case we're talking about describing somebody, a best friend, you will be using the PAT method. So PAT stands for purpose, audience, tone. Purpose is why are you writing? And you'll walk your student through as to why are they writing this piece. Next, audience, it's who are you writing for? Your student can begin to understand that if I'm writing for this group or this audience, how can I change the way that I write? And finally, T is for tone. So what language will you use? Will this be formal, casual, complaining? These are different types of tones that your student will learn about in this course. Now you begin to brainstorm. The example we have here is my best friend. So you can work with your student to help brainstorm different ideas about what the student can write for the given writing task. In this case, my best friend. This doesn't mean that you should give the answers to your student. A good method is just asking questions to get your student to think. What does your best friend look like? What kind of hobbies does your best friend like? Is your best friend nice? Is your best friend funny? These are ways to get your student to think without actually giving him or her the answer. Now we're looking at language patterns, and in this case we're talking about how a sentence is put together. In this example, we have our subject plus verb plus object, or a subject plus verb plus adjective. These are the structures that the student is going to use when writing this piece, and these are things that you will be looking for when you read your student's homework. Here are more examples of what this looks like. Plan your writing. It's at this point where you can walk your student through, after they've already brainstormed and they know the topic they want, you can now walk your student through how to plan and put together their piece. So we have 3 examples here. We have favorite people and things, personality, and hobbies and interests. The questions on the left are to help the student kind of think about what they want to write about, and these are the questions that you can also ask during class. So if you're talking about your favorite people and things, you can ask questions like, who is your best friend's favorite person? What is his or her favorite food? And as the student begins to answer it, you can help guide the student through his or her writing. And on the bottom, there's an example of how the student can go about their writing task. Again, this slide is to help your student begin to write. Now we're moving on to lesson 9, and here's the structure for lesson 9. It'll start with warm-up, writing skills, and sentence writing, followed by the homework feedback. This is the student had done his homework, and now he's sharing it with you, and you look at it, and you give him or her feedback, followed by language extension, and then writing reflection. But what happens if he or she does not submit her homework? We also have backup checkpoints. And I'll show an example of this in a little bit so you know what to do if your student does not do his or her homework. After the backup checkpoints, you move on to language extension and then to writing reflection. So now let's look at writing skills and sentence writing. So writing skills, these are the tools that students will use to help improve their writing ability. First, this first example writing skill will be using simple present tense. As the teacher, you will be able to explain to your student what this looks like and how to use it properly in a sentence, and then the student will have the opportunity to use what you had just described correctly. Don't forget that if the student is struggling, make sure that you can guide your student to the right answer, and then if they're still not understanding, make sure that you provide and demonstrate for them as well. Homework feedback or backup checkpoints. Now, if you remember, step 4, the student is supposed to submit homework, but if he or she does not, and this is the homework that you assigned in lesson 8, here is the correct process. So if the student submitted his or her homework, you'll be able to see it in the PPT. What that means is that you can check the student's submission, and then you can let the student know, hey, this was correct, or hey, you need work here. Now, if the student did not submit homework, you can select this highlighted button that I have here on this PPT for you. And what this does is it tells the system, hey, the student did not submit the homework, so the backup checkpoint will pop up. And that's where you can still check to make sure, is my student understanding the material? Is my student able to complete the lesson that we had gone over in lesson 8? And here's just an example of what the checkpoint looks like. Language extension and writing reflection. Now that you've checked your student's homework, you can begin to extend on the material that you guys learned during these 2 lessons. In this example, we have the student is learning about music and watching movies. They're extending the material on hobbies. And you can let your student know that these are other ways that they can talk about their best friends or any other topics that are related to this task. After that, the student can then self-reflect. They'll go over the writing submission that they had, and they can check and see if the tone they use is correct, if they knew the purpose, if they knew who their audience was. And the way that the student will self-reflect or self-assess is by giving themselves either a smiley face, a not-so-smiley face, or a frowning face. Just make sure that when the student goes through this, that you can also provide feedback as well. Especially if the student did do certain things correct, but they think they didn't, that's where you can step in and let them know, hey, you did a great job. All right, I hope you enjoyed learning about our writing lessons, lesson 8 and lesson 9. I wish you good luck on your future classes and happy teaching.